Greetings. I'm your host, Jason Myles, here for another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel, welcome. So glad to have you here. If you're one of our returning listeners, subscribers, or one of our very valued patrons, so glad to have you back. I know the Wednesday night viewing audience is used to seeing the red zone at this time, but this was the soonest we could have our guests come on and speak. So here we are. For those that missed it last night, we had founder of Print Day, Robin Smith, on to talk a bit about what Print Day is and how important art is as a form of expression in a moment where we are witnessing so many freedoms being repressed. Following our interview with Robin, MT and I had an impromptu champagne room gratis for free. And that's all before we slipped beyond the velvet rope of TIR VIP and watched the 1984 Cold War classic Red Dawn. Remember, we do have playlists for all the shows we do here on TIR in chronological order, so they're easy to find. Make sure you check those out when we're done here. Also, when we're done here, because it's April 1st, and I hate April Fool's Day. I really do. I think it's stupid. But I decided, let's watch a movie for April 1st. So, movie night tonight. Surprise!
We're coming for you.
Whoa! We're going to watch April Fool's Day. It is a horror movie from, I shouldn't say horror movie. Yeah, I'll say horror movie. For those that don't know, I won't spoil the ending. I love spoiling endings. I'm like, the movie's 40 years old. If you haven't seen it by now, fuck right off. But for tonight, I won't tell you how the movie ends. I'll wait for the movie to be over, and then you guys can all give me shit afterwards.
You having an unnatural allegiance to losers is not like
But
it.
I love the fans. Love the fans. Now, if you appreciate the quantity and quality of programming that we do here on TIR, and if you'd like to join us for our raucous champagne rooms and movie nights, then become a patron or a paid YouTube subscriber for as little as $3 a month or a one-time payment of $30 for the year. You can have access to all the past and present champagne rooms, movie night replays that feature all the TIR in-movie banter. You get the weekly TIR newsletter, and you get early access and sometimes exclusive access to the Crisis Papers. As MT's been saying, don't put it on Substack for free. Hey, Jesus Christ. Just know that your small donation goes a long way in making sure this channel can stay on the air. Now, on to what you people came here for in the first place. What the hell is going on in Cuba? As a survivor of the Cold War, I can still recall the palpable fear of nuclear annihilation that always seemed just moments away. The United States lived under the constant specter of a Soviet nuclear threat, and if you watch films from that era, you'll see just how deeply that fear permeated popular culture. Fantasies of invasion by Cuba and Nicaraguan forces pouring through supposedly lax borders in Mexico. Of course, none of that ever happened, but that didn't stop millions from believing that our Soviet-aligned neighbor just 90 miles off the coast of Florida posed an existential threat. Meanwhile, in reality, the United States invaded the tiny island nation of Grenada over the construction of an airport and oversaw the overthrow and killing of its leadership. Across Central America, the so-called dirty wars unfolded with U.S. backing, leaving a trail of devastation. As I got older, reading more, traveling internationally, I began to understand that the story I'd been told was backwards. The United States wasn't simply the victim of global jealousy over our freedoms. Increasingly, it looked like something closer to the evil empire we grew up watching in the Star Wars films. Over time, and especially in the wake of the administrations of George W. Bush and Donald Trump, that reality has become harder to ignore. The idea that Cuba is a threat, that Venezuela is plotting against us, or that Iran is the singular villain in global politics, these narratives feel increasingly detached from the reality on the ground. Recent events, from Israel's devastating war in Gaza to the revelations surrounding Epstein, have forced many Americans to reconsider who the real sources of violence and instability in the world are, and Cuba doesn't fit the bill. Yet there remains a bipartisan consensus in Washington that Cuba must continue to be treated as a global adversary. With Marco Rubio now positioned at the helm of U.S. foreign policy, efforts to crush any counter-hegemonic movement or hegemonic government, no matter how small or economically fragile, remain a central priority. Today's guest brings firsthand experience of the human cost of that policy, the daily reality faced by ordinary Cubans under U.S. sanctions imposed in the name of protecting America. And to be clear, this episode isn't about influence or discourse or what Hassan Piker was wearing on a trip. This is about journalism, about documenting what is actually happening on the ground in Cuba in our name. Because while media attention gets diverted towards personalities, the material conditions on the island continue to deteriorate under a decades-long sanctions regime that many international observers say is contributing directly to widespread shortages of food, medicine, and fuel. From the current affairs article, quote, How to Slander a Humanitarian Mission, we have both seen things that will be permanently burned into our minds. Our government is systematically pushing or punishing the Cuban people, not in pursuit of human rights, but to extract political and economic concessions. For a wealthy nation to impose this level of suffering on a poorer one is not just misguided, it is morally grotesque. The issue is not difficult to grasp, unquote. Now, before I bring in our guest, let me bring in my co-host. You usually see him with me on these sporting endeavors, and now you're seeing him on the main show, Mac.
What up, everybody? That's right. I got called up. Jason's like, need you to pinch hit. Get in here. And I'm like, yes.
You're the
I'm here for
Wednesday
you,
guy.
Jason.
You're the official Wednesday guy.
I'm the hump day guy. I'll take it.
The hump day. Oh, that means, okay. There's a lot of different ways we can go with that. But he is an editor at Current Affairs. He was my editor at Current Affairs. Please welcome Alex SKOPIC.
Hey, Jason. How you doing?
We're doing good over here. You were part of a flotilla to distribute humanitarian aid to Cuba. I do have to ask, how did Current Affairs get involved with the whole thing?
Yes, that's the Nuestra America mission. I heard that it was going to be happening about 2 months ago when they initially announced they were doing a boat flotilla. Because the first plan was they were going to do similar to the Samud flotilla to Gaza. They were going to do just like boats. So I, sent an email to the link on the Progressive International's website and volunteered for that. And then I didn't hear back about it for about another month. And then when I did, it turned out they had got so much interest in doing it that they'd converted it into what they call a convoy model, where it's, if you can get there by boat or by plane or whatever method you can use, just get to Havana with as much aid as you can, on this date. So I went with a small delegation of like media people that the comedian Kate Willett organized through Code Pink. I think we had about 15 people in our little subgroup. And then Code Pink had something like 130 people on their charter plane. And then that was part of something like 600 people overall from different countries. So, impressive turnout, really.
Yeah, and from what you guys described, people were just bringing anything they could. Somebody brought a bunch of solar panels, kind of like little solar batteries almost, right?
Yeah, Gerard Dalbon, shout out Gerard from New York City DSA. He was the solar panel guy on the trip. He'd done a little fundraiser, and he literally just bought every solar panel he could get his hands on and
Wow.
put them in 2 suitcases. Lots of people were doing things like that. There were people, people had lined their suitcases with Tylenols. People had brought, like school supplies to give to the kids. Like, just everybody had something.
Were you pretty much sneaking stuff in to get through U.S. customs?
No. So it's actually, this is like a common misconception. It's actually perfectly legal to take humanitarian aid to Cuba. So we had a charter plane, great big cargo hold with, boxes and crates and duffel bags. We didn't get to take any carry-on luggage because the whole cargo space was just full of the aid. Mm-hmm. And then other people were going by boat and had like literally tons of stuff coming from Brazil and Italy and all over. So no, it's actually They want you to think that you'll have a problem with customs if you try to help Cuba, but no, it's actually perfectly legal. This is one of the things people ought to know.
Mhm. You describe what you saw in Cuba in almost visceral terms: the shortages, the decaying infrastructure, the desperation of the people. At what point does sanctions stop being a policy tool and become a collective punishment?
Well, I mean, I would argue there's no point that it's not a collective punishment, because you think about the goal of sanctions in this case to regime change. They want Trump has announced he wants Diaz-Canel to step down as president of Cuba. Supposedly, there are all these excuses about humanitarian rights. But really, the sanctions, and there are studies about this, so that we've written about this before in Current Affairs. Sanctions disproportionately punish the poorest people. I mean, when you hurt an entire country, it's not the leaders who feel it first. It is the people who already don't have anything. The leaders are going to get whatever resources there are after the sanctions. So, yeah, sanctions are pretty much always collective punishment.
Mac, did you want to follow up?
I mean, isn't that the insane thing though, Alex? Because I mean, since I would argue probably the post-war years of World War II, getting into the 50s, you start seeing the United States government really lean into sanctioning, governments that they consider antagonistic or an enemy for whatever reason, right? And to start, they were pretty, limited based on one or two resources, and then it just became no, we'll let nothing in. So I agree with you 100%. Like, I don't think in my lifetime there's been a sanction that's been employed against another nation that has been for a humanitarian, it's been strictly there to force regime change or just punish the people for not, I guess, changing the regime the way the United States government wants.
Yeah. And even on its own terms, it doesn't make sense, right? Because, if the theory is we're going to do all these sanctions and then people will be so mad at the situation that they rise up and they change the government. Well, it's hard to rise up when you're hungry. Your all of your energy is devoted to trying to survive. You don't have the time or the energy for politics. So it sort of contradicts itself.
Well, why have the sanctions, in your opinion, failed? I mean, you're there on the ground. And when I say failed, I mean, look, if the stated goal is to pressure a new government for the people to rise up and say no more, why has that proposition failed in, 6 decades, something like that?
Yeah, it's been so U.S. sanctions have been in place since, I believe, the year is 1961, the Kennedy administration, pretty much right after right after Castro's revolution and the nationalizing of the sugar companies. And in that now, 70 plus years? A little under 70, I think, something like 65, 67. It's never worked. The Castro government was in place until Castro's death, and now through Diaz-Canel, the third successor. There's been no sign of regime change, even during what's called the special period, when the Soviet Union collapsed and they had no trading partner suddenly. They just buckled down, tightened control. And we saw, when we were in Havana, that, we saw on Friday Diaz-Canel speak at this big convention center in Havana. And clearly he's not feeling the impact of the sanctions. The government, the military aren't feeling the impact of the sanctions. They get whatever resources there are. It's everybody else. It's the ordinary people that you see on the street and that you see all through Havana who are having a really hard time and don't have enough to really get by, let alone rise up.
Mac, do you want to follow up on that?
Well, doesn't that beg the question? Is that even what the Cuban people really want? Like, I mean, not to kind of ask you to answer for Cuban people, but I mean, I'm sure that had to come up in conversation at one point while you were down there, because this is what we've been hearing. Like, the Cuban people want to be free of the communist yoke and fully embrace free market capitalism. You know, like did you have that conversation while you're down there? And like, what did the people have to say?
Yeah, so in the first place, it's a hard thing to answer, because in the first place, with the language barrier, like my Spanish is not really fluent enough to have that kind of in-depth conversation with most people. We ran into a few people who can do Spanish and English, and also, of course, Cuban people aren't necessarily sharing all of their deepest political thoughts with outsiders. But no, nothing I saw in Cuba indicates that they want free market capitalism, or even that they necessarily want regime change. I think it's just the opposite. I mean, I think we did see a real national pride in Cuba. They are. And justifiably, they are proud of their healthcare system. They're proud of their education system, and these are the things that are, sort of the fruits of the revolution. Free universal healthcare, and even in terms of their historic icons, Castro and Guevara. In the West, we look on Castro as this dictator mostly. And arguably it was one, but there is even a real pride in the revolution and in Castro. I mean, you will see in little shops framed pictures of Che Guevara. Like the way older people in America used to have framed pictures of JFK. Like he's like their George Washington. There's. And you will see signs of what you call dissent. We saw a lot of graffiti actually in Havana that had like little political slogans. Like we saw ACAB graffiti.
Interesting.
That apparently is universal. And I think we saw another one that said something like, if hard work paid off, the donkey would own the farm. So people are clearly dissatisfied, but no, I don't think they want. I saw nothing that indicates that anybody wants a U.S. takeover.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what kills me about our foreign policy in the post World War II era, is that we've used weaponized sanctions. We've used the CIA for clandestine overthrows. We've just literally invaded other nations, and they expect the people to openly welcome the invader, and rise up against their government. It's like, dude, we would do the same thing here in the United States if there was an invader. I mean, look, Jason showed a movie about what exactly would happen. I don't think it would end as well. I mean, let's face it. You get a bunch of kids from Colorado, they're going to be like really high most of the day, and they might go out and patrol every so often.
I don't even know if Alex Alex, are you old enough to know Red Dawn?
I haven't watched it, but I know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
We watched Red Dawn last night.
Yeah. But like, I never understood that. It's like, especially with what's going on in Iran, there's like, well, why aren't the people rising up? Well, we shit on him in 1953 when we overthrew the first democratically elected leader. Then we invaded in 1979 because we didn't like how things were going. Do you really think they're going to be very receptive after you dropped, what I affectionately called a metric fuck ton of bombs on their most populated areas, including an all-girls school? You really think they're going to be? Yeah, you really think they're going to be like, oh, sure, America, come on in? And I imagine, because I've only met a few Cuban dudes during my time in service. One of them, his family had left Cuba after Castro came to power, and the other guy literally just came over on a boat. But he wasn't dissatisfied with the Castro regime. He just needed a job, so he joined the army. I don't quite understand how that goes, but it shouldn't surprise me, but I just find it confounding how we approach foreign policy in this day and age. And it's been the same thing over and over again. It's literally one lack of regime change that the United States government wants. I shouldn't say lack of accepted regime change, because when you look at like our Benz, a lot of the other Central and South American, Allende wasn't exactly well liked by the people. So I was just really curious about that, Alex. Thank you.
What's interesting to me about what you're talking about here, Mac, is the fact that a lot of these overthrows were a little more clandestine, as far as like, let's just take Iran, for example. There's been several books written on it. I think Kinzer writes some of the better ones. But they read like mystery novels almost, because of the amount of espionage that's involved. Now, in 2026, all of the espionage is gone, and it's simply, we want the oil. Maybe I'll take Cuba. Maybe I'll liberate it. I don't know. What does that say about this flippant nature of U.S. empire, this deep into the empire now, that no one even cares about trying to make it look natural, or like we're not going to stage any sort of color revolutions anymore?
Well, I would even say in 53, there was only a certain amount of subterfuge from it, because look at who led the CIA operation to overthrow Mossadegh. It was a guy named Kermit Roosevelt. It was Teddy Roosevelt's kid. And the U.S. press wasn't quiet. They put his name out there, so the means in which he did it, sure. But, they wanted people to know that there was this larger than life dude's kid that was running the operation, right? But getting more to your point, just the flippancy of it. I put it this way. When you have the world's most funded military on the planet, where you, to the point where you put more money into it than the next 9 countries combined, and 8 of those are allies, right? You're not defending freedom, you're a bully, right? Because when you look at armaments, no one can go toe-to-toe with us. People like to use China. No, they can't. They don't really have the capabilities to project military power very far from their borders, because what? Lack of aircraft carrier. That's something we have on lock. We have more aircraft carriers than the rest of the world's nations combined. And every, we can point out Afghanistan, right? The United States military has shown we really do have problems with insurgency, and insurgent movements. And that's always going to be a tough nut, unless you take the same tack that the Brits used in Singapore, which I'm not sure if you're, aware of what they did. They essentially went back to their old Boer War roots and set up concentration camps. And, that's not something the United States government was going to do in Afghanistan. But it's absolutely mind-boggling that we can sit here and drop, what is the dollar amount so far for the bombs we've dropped in Iran, right?
Yeah, it's in the ridiculous billions.
Yeah, it's in the tens of billions already, and just being that flippant with that kind of dollar amount, knowing the destruction you're causing, right? They know exactly what they're doing, like people think, well, they send a drone in and they put a, this nice little picture on a screen, and then they hit the button and the bomb goes, woo, and then it explodes, right? No, there are people on the ground feeding targeted intelligence back. That's how you put packages together to get this kind of bombing authorized. And we have seen the military push back against the political appointees over top of them, right? I mean, case in point, earlier today, the Army said, hey, we're suspending the pilots that flew the Apache in front of Kid Rock's house. And then what immediately happened? Hegseth said, nope, they're back on duty. No harm, no foul. You're seeing a rift between the political appointees in the military and the actual people that are serving, right? And I, just speaking to the people that I know that are still in, they are not happy about this. And like I got an email today. I don't know, like if you guys know what All American Week is, but it is a week of festivities celebrating the 82nd Airborne Division. The division
sounds like some Fayetteville shit.
Oh, it's a week full of sports, and all the old timers come out, and then you do a division sized pass interview where you march past who's ever on the grandstand like we're back in the 1800s, right? That was canceled. I was stationed here for 12 years, dude. We never canceled it, which means that entire division is going to be gone soon. You know, that's the only way they cancel it. You know, we are just thumbing our nose at the international order. We're thumbing our nose at you know, the laws of warfare. The United States government is thumbing their nose at everybody, and prosecuting these. You know, I mean, look, in the last 4 months, we've had 2 nations whose leadership has been removed through American military adventurism.
Well, that's where Cuba comes into play. Are the people there on the ground kind of frightened that they're going to be Venezuela Part 2?
Yeah, it's definitely something people are, concerned about, talking about. Both the ordinary people and the government leaders, for sure. I mean, we talked to on one of the days we stopped in and saw a press conference with their deputy foreign minister. His name, I think, is something like Carlos. I could look it up. Carlos de Casio, and that was alarming because, you know, the visible worry on that guy is something, you know, we're not used to seeing in public servants. Like he looked like he hadn't slept properly for a while, and yeah, the threat of invasion. I mean, they clearly see what has happened with Maduro, what has happened with the Ayatollah. There is, I think, a certain level of defiance there. I think they are not in any hurry to surrender, but it's definitely a conversation.
But what does Cuba have? I mean, maybe I'm just too indoctrinated into, you know, Richmond, California public schools that I just don't know what natural resource is in Cuba that would be in such an abundance that the United States would want it. I mean, if you think about Iran, you can say, oh, there's oil over there, and it's just a big bad. And that's more of an Israel fight, right? If you look at Venezuela, you can talk about oil, but we know it's harder to extract, and that was just a cover, and it sounded good for Trump at the time, but it didn't really make sense logistically. But when we talk about Cuba, what's there that, because again, we talk about he's going to bomb. It's like, but what is there to take if you're going to liberate it or take it, as he said?
So there's a couple things here. So in terms of natural resources, I mean, Cuba has got their 2 big ones have always been tobacco and sugar. I mean, the tobacco, the cigars, famous. The sugar, it's a similar thing to Jamaica. I was reading earlier today, actually, that Milton Hershey of the Hershey Chocolate Company used to have a company town in Cuba where he would harvest the sugar and refine it, and he built his little sugar railroad. So sugar's a big one, but more than that, I think it's Cuba itself. It's the land. It's the beachfront property. You know, it is a incredibly beautiful place when you're there, despite all the poverty, despite all the crumbling infrastructure. And, you know, you go there, and I was talking about this with Nathan, but you can literally feel the communism in a way, because there is no corporate presence whatsoever.
Interesting.
There are no chain stores. There are no advertisements, no billboards. You have this beautiful beachfront that is just plain buildings where people live. It's
untouched.
Just people going to the little wall by the sea and fishing off the wall. And then you think about it, and you know, there are all these Miami developers who are, you know, Marco Rubio's base, and they would love to get their hands on that. And if they did, it would be immediately a Hilton and a casino, and
So they just you're saying their goal then is to return Cuba to what it was 70 plus years ago, when there were literal boats you could take in Florida, get you there in a few hours, you gamble all night and come back home.
Yeah, and it would be, we can look to the example of the pre-Castro history, how the U.S. treated Cuba. I mean, it was a big tourist destination, lots of casinos, lots of hotels, most of them run by organized crime, which Castro kicked out. And then it was, the sugarcane and the plantations and really terrible working conditions on the plantations. So I think they do want some version of that to return. And we can look at things like, the situation in Puerto Rico right now, how Puerto Rico has been managed by the U.S. If Cuba were the way people like Rubio would like, I think it would pretty much be another Puerto Rico.
But even then, it still feels like that's a lot of suffering for people. Like you could lift the sanctions and just talk to the government. That would probably be a lot easier if you want to stick. I live in Mexico, and as much as people want to believe that this government is throwing a middle finger to the United States, there's a lot of U.S. companies down here. And, there's a Walmart that everybody goes to, and I don't see any Pemex gas stations. Everything is Chevron or Arco. But the point remains, you're close enough that you could be a trade partner with the United States and not hurt the mission. Is it a stubbornness in both governments at this point, or is it really just the U.S. is just like, no, F it, we just want to keep these sanctions because F them, we want to take the whole thing over?
Well, it's really the U.S. It's maybe 95% the U.S. because and specifically the Trump administration, because under Obama, 2014, 2017, they had that brief what they call the normalization period, and they did do business. And people in Cuba still talk about that. We had a guy. There are these guys in Havana who their whole thing is they have the classic cars, and they hang out and try to when they're a tourist, which there hardly ever are now. They try to rent their little car for like a ride around town, and we talked to one of those guys, and he had some English, and he was telling us, "You're Americans. Thank you for Obama. It was the best time we had." So there's really no reason it can't be done. It's kind of ideological, I think, and it's the threat of an example that a government that isn't capitalist, can work. Mm-hmm. They have to have it be poor and be falling apart to use as the example of, this is what happens if you do socialism.
There's a longstanding narrative in the U.S. that countries like Cuba are threats, right? Grenada. From your reporting, what does Cuba actually represent to American power, if not a military threat?
Well, the military threat is basically none. I mean, Trump has Cuba on this list called the state sponsors of terror, which is just the most ridiculous thing because they can't name any actual acts of terror. The excuse is that Cuba brokered meetings between the Colombian government and some paramilitary guys, and then they didn't extradite the paramilitary guys. But even that falls apart because Norway did the same thing, and Norway is not considered a sponsor of terror. So the threat just doesn't exist in terms of military. It's in terms of ideology and the threat of a good example of an alternate system working out. That's the threat.
Mac, did you want to follow?
Yeah, I mean that's what kills me about this. Cuba is island wise, it's a small area. Like they have no capabilities to invade the United States, right? Like the Soviet Union, the great boogeyman of the 20th century isn't there anymore. Like the fact that we continue to blatantly interfere with just the existence of a people who want no part, of an open market or to share, to embrace capitalism the way the United States has. Like, that isn't a threat to me. Like, this is a tiny island nation with like 8 or 9 million people on it. We're pushing 380 million here. Cuba is no danger to us. This is like that little bird that just sits on the back of an elephant, right? And the fact that the United States government deems it necessary to embargo and blockade this country is just disgusting. And it's not just an embargo. We have active duty naval warships that go in and out of Guantanamo that ensure that shipping doesn't make it into the rest of the island. It's just it dumbfounds me. And granted, I didn't like some of the characters that made the trip, but I was glad that people that had the ability to get up and do something got up and did something. And maybe we can alleviate some of that suffering I know it. We saw what, Jason, like 750,000 barrels were coming off this Russian warship. How long is that going to last?
Yeah.
When you look at what the energy requirements it takes to run a country.
What was those blackouts like when you got there? Was it nighttime when you got there? Did you get there in the day?
No, we got there at about midday on Friday, and then the first blackout we saw, we were having dinner at like this little restaurant that's like just on one of the street corners in the center of Havana, and it's crazy when it happens, because I don't know if either of you have been through like a citywide blackout before, like the ones they have in Texas or anything like that. But
yep, here in Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah. In Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're just in the middle of eating, talking. All of a sudden, the lights cut out, and then you go to the window and you look out across the city, and all of the lights are out. Like, there are maybe a handful of little specks that are solar lights or generator lights that people have, and you have this city of millions that are just in the dark, and people walking around through it, looking like ghosts, trying to make their way as best they can. It's a really eerie thing to see.
It's got to be a little scary. That's uncomfortable. I don't care where you are. It's uncomfortable.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, weirdly, despite the image it has in America, Cuba, the whole time we were there, feels very safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is apparently like virtually no violent crime, and people are not. It's hard to explain, but people are not stressed and anxious and hostile to each other in these situations in the way they are in the US.
Mm.
Like, there's a real sort of community spirit that we don't have here, or at least not everywhere.
Like you said, you could feel the communism, as you said. Well, that's interesting.
It's a real thing. It's very strange to be in a society that is not capitalist and is not, where everything doesn't revolve around competition all the time. But you really can feel it.
Well, that kind of gets into my next question. The article is titled "How to Slander a Humanitarian Mission." What does slander campaign look like in practice? Why do you think the coverage of Cuba pivoted to media personalities instead of the material conditions that were on the ground and actually the mission of the people that were there?
Well, because they don't want to talk about that. And the actual facts of the I don't know if people know this, but the details of this, but the Trump administration policy since the end of January has been to allow no fuel whatsoever into Cuba. I mean, the language is literally anyone who provides them with any fuel. gets sanctions and penalties. So that's impossible to defend, because that literally means we, the richest nation in the world, are going to choke out one of the poorest nations and not let them fuel their hospitals and schools. So you really can't defend that on the face of it. So what you do is you make distractions. You put out the big cloud of squid ink, and you make it about, oh, this particular influencer who went on the mission is a bad person, or why did they stay in a hotel, or you try to claim that the Irish rappers threw a concert that they shouldn't have, or something like that. You make all these side issues because the actual issue is just impossible to defend. And we see this with Gaza too, right?
Yes.
Because
yes,
they always want to talk about, oh, this person at this protest said a problematic slogan, or Zoran Mamdani's wife liked a problematic tweet. Anything but talk about the real central issue.
Yeah, the 5-star hotel thing, I think this is where, for me, and again, I don't want to talk about it too much, optics really matter. And when I saw the first reports coming from right-wing media, I was like, oh man, this is going to keep everybody on their back foot. First and foremost, the 5-star hotel thing, which is extremely complicated for the average American. So can you break it down as simple as possible for us, Alex, how that works? And 5-star hotels, it's a little different rating system in Cuba than maybe what we're used to here in the States.
Yeah. So this is something that, when you first hear it, it sounds like a kind of halfway reasonable concern, because the narrative has been, oh, these activists, you went and stayed in Cuba in 5-star hotels, and that's very different from an ordinary person's experience, and you're doing poverty tourism in a kind of gross class-based way. And that sounds, like it could be a reasonable concern, right? Like you think about comparable situations, think about like journalists in the green zone in Iraq, not really seeing the real Iraq. But the thing there is, first of all, 5-star, I'm not really sure what that means in the context of Cuban hotels. I mean, the room we were in was pretty much like any hotel you'd find near an airport. It had a couple of beds, a desk, a toilet, nothing.
Toilet wasn't gold.
No gold toilet. The toilet sort of didn't work, actually.
Well, there you go. That's that's where it was on 4-star.
Yeah, 4-star. But yeah, so nothing. It's definitely more comfortable than the homes that regular Cuban people are having to live in, and we saw some of those too. But the thing is that it's a result of U.S. policy. The State Department has this great big long list of what they call Cuba prohibited accommodations, and it lists, I think, close to 100 hotels in Havana alone that are either owned by the government or somebody friendly to the government, so they're off limits to Americans. If you break the ban, the penalties are a possibility of, I think, a $250,000 fine from the State Department, or the Treasury Department, I think it is, or prison time. Like you can literally be sent to prison for staying in the wrong hotel, which is
insane. How would they know?
Yeah. Well, supposedly, it depends, but they may. They told us to keep documentation, like keep our documents for when we checked in and when we checked out, and any receipts for anything, because apparently this didn't happen to us, but what may happen is that when you get back to the Miami airport, they may pull you aside and demand to see your documents to prove that you didn't stay in a banned hotel.
Wow, man.
Damn.
I mean, this is what kills me, right? Like I've been to some less developed parts of the world, and even with, I would say, a subpar reputation, do you know what they didn't do they didn't take me to like their equivalent of the Hojo. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Right? They were like, no, pump the brakes. We got some Yanks here. Let's show them some pretty rad places. And that's what they did, right? Like, you're never going to go someplace and like you get there unless you go to some place that just really hates Americans, right? Where they're going to be like, hey, man, take them to that hotel that's literally almost underwater. Just let them stay there.
The one with
you know,
mildewed walls.
Yeah, the one where the toilet doesn't work at all, right? And water, it's only cold between the hours of 4 and 8 a.m. Like they don't want you to see that, right? But like, it just, when I see stuff like that, because I was seeing all that too, Alex, because like I get up early in the morning and go lift, and they have the news on, and of course Fox News is one of them, and literally the kneecap thing was one of the ones they hit on. Like, they're supposed to be freedom fighters, and look at them. They're playing. See this concert? They're playing music. Just all those people in the audience. Those are all military and government officials.
But how scary is it though, you guys? And I send this question to both of you. That we saw this in the UK when that young man stabbed and killed those 3 little girls. That he was a Muslim extremist. He was not. He wasn't a foreigner. He was born in the UK. He did have some issues, of course, because he did murder 3 small children. But the outrage from a bad tweet that was then retweeted by Andrew Tate that kind of got a certain part of the country in a frenzy. We're seeing that same thing with this. I just think, as disgusting as this may sound, outside of a small part of Florida, because it's kind of only South Florida, no one in Ocala gives 2 hot dams what happens in Cuba. Right? The panhandle gives a fuck. Outside of that region, nobody cares what a Hassan Piker or a kneecap is and what they're doing and who they're doing it to. And for Fox News to just run with that whole kids died in this ward, does that become the babies are being murdered story that kicked off the Iraq invasion?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fairly good parallel. And there have always been issues in the media with bias and with things being selectively presented. But in the last 10 years or so, the Trump era, like the extent to which there's zero consideration for whether things are just true or not is really kind of striking. And just to quickly address the kneecap thing, the headline with that was all kneecap throws a special concert and wastes a lot of electricity, and maybe the electricity should have gone to a hospital or something like that. It wasn't a special concert at all. It was a long-standing Cuban musical festival that happens every spring. Kneecap just popped up and did about an 8-minute set at it. And it's, a nice gesture. People are going through a terrible time. You give them a little music. And they spun that into like a whole different thing. And then the other thing there is, about South Florida. This really is just South Florida, and I guess Ted Cruz has wound up in Texas. And actually, I don't know if you've read, but Joan Didion has a great book called Miami that's all about the right-wing Cuban community in Miami. And it really is this small handful of people who are completely directing U.S.-Cuba policy. Like the other 49 states barely get a say. And it's the only comparable situation is with the Israel lobby. I mean, that and the Cuban American lobby are the 2 really powerful, aggressive lobbies in the U.S. that want a hostile foreign policy.
Yeah, and they're both stupidly well-funded, stupidly well-funded. Because when you look at a lot of the people that fled the island after Castro and the revolution, these people all had, important positions with, some very familiar names that we're still dealing with now. Like, look at Hawaii is still dealing with the Dole family, which had massive plantations in Cuba as well.
Yeah.
So when they come stateside, they're already plugged in. They have a job with the company. They ride that 50s to 60s wave of wealth. And like you said, Jason, out in Miami, they develop these pockets of, power and influence, and they start funding. Like, they have their own PAC, just like IPAC, where they, like Alex said, they direct foreign policy. A group of like, what would you say, like 20 people, Alex? Like, the people that actually fund this are the ones pushing a lot of this.
It's probably more than that. It's probably maybe a few hundred who own different, chain businesses and things across South Florida. But we ran into some of these people. Actually, we the night before we left for Miami, we were looking for a place to eat in like near the airport, and there's this one restaurant called the Versailles Cuban Restaurant, which I learned later was apparently like one of the headquarters of this sort of right-wing movement. It's like where they have meetings. And outside it were these frenzied right-wing Cuban Americans yelling and protesting in favor of Trump's policy. Like, one guy had a "Make Cuba Great Again" t-shirt. So they're very committed to their whole deal, and they have this outsized influence that basically is just all money.
Alex, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with us today and stay late at the office. You could be eating a beignet right now, enjoying your evening, and you chose to stay with us. So thank you.
That's coming later.
Shout out Cafe Du Monde.
Yes,
I frequented too many times.
Alex, I need you to smash one for me, dude, because it's been a while since I've gotten down there, and I haven't had one in forever.
Just a big bag of powdered sugar.
Just Alex, put your face in the bag and just pull up and look like Tony Montana. Just let
the right wing media go crazy with that. Alex returns from Cuba with it. So for Americans who still see Cuba primarily as an adversary, what's the biggest misconception they need to unlearn? And what would a genuinely humanitarian U.S. policy toward Cuba look like? And do you see any realistic political pathway to that? I know it's a 15-part question.
Yeah, so no, and this is the really important thing about this mission, and the whole reason we went to Cuba is to try to help people understand this, because we were in Cuba a couple of days. But everyone we met, the Cuban people are they're just people, just like us. In fact, they're like significantly friendlier than a lot of Americans. They're not some dogmatic communists. They don't hate America. And we really are just tormenting them for no reason. And so what we've got to do is, first there's an effort right now in Congress that Premier Jayapal and a few other people are organizing. I think Rokana is on board with this, to get a war powers resolution to prevent Trump from attacking Cuba. And that's really important. So because also the lobby that favors the hostile policy is so small, if we can get up a lobby that opposes it and wants more open relations, it wouldn't take that many people. So, if you're hearing this, you can email your representative, phone their office, turn up to their office if you're nearby, and then put pressure on your representatives is one of the things. And then also, more aid missions like the one we've just done. I mean, it's shockingly easy to just go to Cuba and bring medicine and bring solar panels and all the things they need. And we're the richest country on earth. There's no reason we can't do that a lot more frequently than we do. And I know there are efforts to organize more missions. If you look up May Day brigades to Cuba. There's one scheduled for May 1st, International Labor Day. So yeah, it's legislative pressure to get rid of the sanctions, to get rid of the aggression, and then just direct aid. I think are the two most important things.
Well, Alex, again, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. Wherever you guys are watching or later listening to the show, there's a link in the description to Alex and Nathan's article. Also, Alex is not just an editor, he's also one of the journalists at Current Affairs, a very brilliant author. Alex, thank you so much for hanging out with us, and you have a very good rest of your evening.
No, thank you for having me. And anytime.
All right, I'll hold you to that. Peace out. Macadocious, thank you for hanging out with me. The last 2 Wednesdays have been non-sports related. I have to ask you in front of all the people,
Okay.
how have you liked the more serious conversations?
I love doing the more serious conversations. That's why, a couple years ago, you were like, Mac, I need you to fill this time slot for me because I need a break. I'm disappearing for a little bit. And we made it happen. We had a great sports related, serious discussion about
It was
stadiums.
Yeah.
Right. I'm here, man. If you ever need me to step up, I'm here, man. I can mediate. I can interview. I'm a multifaceted, bald white dude. I can cover a lot of bases.
and you're a good friend.
Well, I love you, dude. I would take a bullet in the lower extremities for you.
I gave you a break because you were ill. You ran a big race, and I'm not gonna pull up any of these images on the screen. We have to go. It's gonna be a movie night, but I'm back on the meme train, and I've been sending you quality images.
Jason has been. He has. There's been a couple of them where I'm like, I don't know, man. I almost had to pull the Jason go in the corner earlier today. But he did make up for it with the next few. Essentially what he's trying to do is set me up with my future ex-wife.
I am.
So I'm getting great ones off his reels in addition to total dime pieces off of our favorite felon dating website. But he sent me a few where she looks totally like she did it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
He was sending me messages back.
Yeah,
she did it. She totally did it.
That's Prairie's thing. That's not mine.
We have an arsenal. Just know there's an arsenal of images for the next red zone that we have to go through so you guys see these things. But Mac is going to go shut it down. I'm going to go hang out with you guys. It's the 40th anniversary of the movie April Fool's Day. It's the ridiculous holiday. The movie is kind of sort of ridiculous, but let's watch it anyway.
Before we go, I just want to give everybody an update on the Browns Stadium. The seats are actually going to be inclined forward, the rows, so you're closer to the field. It'll be the stadium with the closest proximity of seats to the sideline. They're building their own version of the wall like Steve Ballmer did in the Intuit Dome.
Yeah.
Okay. And it looks beautiful, right? Still no method of payment yet. Ohio has a fund where, like, say an award was given, the person died, it gets turned into a state fund, right? Or if a property wasn't claimed, it gets auctioned off and it goes into the state fund. And the state of Ohio is like, listen, we'll just give the Browns that as our contribution. And shockingly, that was turned down in the courts. So this $2.5 billion boondoggle still doesn't have a proper line of accounting. And for them to get it up, and when they want to, they're going to have to break ground within 6 months.
That's actually right around the corner.
Yeah. It's
6 months is going to be pretty cold, isn't it?
Oh, dude. Yeah. And that's the problem. They'll probably be able, get this, it's also going to be in the ground. It will not be on top of it. They're going to dig down in order to keep it warmer in the winters and cut down on energy consumption.
Okay.
I still don't know why these domes don't put solar panels on top. But what the fuck do I know? I'm not an engineer.
Hippie bullshit, Mac. That's why.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right. Like when they have to get 20 feet into the ground to start laying girders and concrete and everything, by that point, it's going to be winter in Northeast Ohio. You're not doing shit. So it's quite insane. And I think with NBA expansion coming as well, we are going to see a plethora of stadium building. And I don't know how that's going to work out for some of these owners, considering that the city of Kansas City had, turned down a team that's won 3 Super Bowls in 6 years. Their request for stadium funds. So we'll
see. What city lost it to? The San Diego Chiefs. I can hear it now.
Oh man. Well, I mean, they're just moving into Kansas proper now. They're leaving Missouri to go to Kansas.
Move away from the middle of nowhere, regardless of how good the barbecue is. They want to move to somewhere where it's. Imagine Patrick Mahomes in Southern California.
I mean, it would be great. But it's just like, we're going to have the actual Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City, Kansas, and we'll have the Gary Indiana Bears. It'll be great.
Midwest football is finest.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out. And Mac, thank you again for coming on. And I'm liking these more serious Wednesday nights. I don't know how you feel about it.
Dude, I'm here for it. Because I would rather have a conversation with somebody who stepped off of a ship who can tell us about what's happening in Cuba, rather than us getting snippets from, like whether we like it or not, Hassan Piker and all these other, I only knew about this thing because Carsey Blanton, one of my favorite musicians, went. I'd rather be getting something from Alex than, some of these other sources or whatever the hell you want to call them. And on top of that, I think, especially with everything that's going on right this second, we might need to have some more serious discussions. Granted, I do enjoy our sports ball into dick and fart jokes. But, there's a lot of things going on right now. You talked about the Supreme Court decisions that are coming down. They had opening arguments in the birthright citizenship case. And that did not work out well for the administration
Trump
whatsoever.
is the first sitting president to show up for those arguments, and apparently he left furious.
Yes. Considering that, like, this is what people don't know, that birthright citizenship clause was argued in Congress before the passage of the 14th Amendment, right? And there was an actual congressman from Michigan, I believe, that said, absolutely not, unless you are a taxpayer. You should not be a citizen. You shouldn't be a citizen. If we're going to do this for non-paying, tax-paying people, it'll be for freed slaves, and that's it. It won't apply to Chinese immigrants. It won't apply to Native Americans. It won't apply to all these other ethnic groups that were coming in the post-Civil War era. And then he looks at his esteemed colleague from guess where? This great state of California, expecting backup. And this guy said, no, Chinese immigrants are helping build, railroads and other parts of the economy that are tying this country together. So I believe that if they have children, they should get all the benefits of citizenship as well. And there was a whole debate on it. And the House passed it overwhelmingly for birthright citizenship before the run-up to the introduction of the 14th Amendment and then it being voted on, right? Mm-hmm. So like there's legal precedent there already that states if you're born here, you're a fucking citizen. Mm-hmm. And the fact, and this is the funny thing, before you guys go watch a phenomenal movie, right? Here's something to chew on with what this giant bag of smashed assholes wants to do when it comes to citizenship. His Secretary of State, who sit here and claims constantly, I am the proud son of Cuban immigrants. Under this law, he wouldn't be a fucking citizen because his parents weren't citizens when they fucking got here. It took him 3 years to get their citizenship. And that's when old Marco turned 3. So he would have been born here by unnaturalized citizens, which by Trump's definition would make him not a citizen. That's irony, if there ever was a little bit. So,
Yeah. It looks like right now the Supreme Court is, which is also a political entity, is trying to become some sort of backstop for some of the more egregious things, right? They turned down tariffs. Now this, I don't know if you saw, one of the high courts just said that it's unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment to defund NPR and PBS.
yes.
These were big wins in this run. And when Trump first walked into office, these are the things he was doing: ending birthright citizenship, defunding PBS and NPR. What else did he? Doge.
Quadrupling the ICE budget.
Yeah. So with all these things being miraculous failures in a way that the first administration didn't have, because there were so many people in place, the experts were still there, the people that still had allegiance to the Constitution and the rule of law, even if they're horrible people. We were joking, me and Cuba were joking, like, you kind of miss John Bolton with this administration, because these are the people that are like, no, you can't do that. We don't have the blah, blah, and the blah. And now you're seeing what happens when you totally go, a businessman can figure this out. I don't know if you saw where he goes, I got rid of all the fancy pens. And he got these new cheap pens.
I got them Sharpie markers because that's what I used to sign all my bills. All my executive orders, Sharpies.
I was like, what? What the fuck? But that's what you get. You get pizza parties.
Yeah.
You get pizza parties.
Yeah, you win a national title. You don't get food from the White House chef anymore. You're getting really cold McDonald's. I just, it is absolutely nuts. Ken, I promise you, man, I ran earlier tonight. Ken donated to my fundraiser because I'm fundraising for Palestinian college students to cover their visa fees and everything to continue going to school here in the States. And Ken was, he kicked in a big chunk. Drea kicked in a big chunk. So I'll drop the link into the Patreon, guys. So if you want to donate some, please, I really appreciate it. I'd like to do whatever I can to help. But it's nuts the way, like, it's almost like the administration has weaponized stupidity the way the US government has weaponized sanctions, right? Like, they're told, hey, you can't legally do this. Well, what's the next step now because of, the conservative kind of consolidation in our federal court system is, okay, we'll just sign the executive order. We'll go to court, right? And we'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court. And even with this pretty pliable and pretty supportive Supreme Court in the last 5 or 6 months, they've been like, whoa, okay, at a certain point, we have to stop. I mean, granted, they're the conversion center anti-LGBTQ bill or court case that went to the Supreme Court was overwhelmingly supported, which was really gross. But it's when you have idiots writing policy for you, which he does by and large, a lot of it's going to get kicked back, right? Like, you might have a layer or two that's like, yeah, let's go, Mr. President. But at a certain point, there's going to be, like you said, a backstop. That's like, wait a minute, dude. Like, you can't do this shit.
We're seeing a little bit of it, but another thing we're seeing, and look, we have to go. But another thing we're seeing, something to chew on, is that Donald Trump will throw anyone under the bus. Does not give a damn how loyal you are. He threw Kristi Noem under the bus. To some degree, he threw Bovino under the bus. Stephen Miller's getting it right now.
Yep. And Kristi Noem's just had a hell of a week. Woo-hoo!
Yeah, the being cross-dresser thing really kind of
just the most giant fake tits and the shortest pink shorts. Just, you know what, man? Rock on. And to me, she can't be pissed off. She was fucking Corey Lewandowski in the fucking bang bus of the skies while she was head of DHS. So, I mean, get over it.
You called her a bang bus mattress actress.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it was reported almost everywhere that she allegedly had an affair with Corey Lewandowski, and they did most of their business on the plane that she took from site to site while she was, to wear a plate carrier and a cowboy hat to support ICE and CBP. So,
It's all soap opera drama, and that's it's a sad state of affairs when old white people are acting this way.
Yeah,
this isn't a Tubi movie. Old white people. It's not a Tubi movie.
No, act your age, people.
Act your age.
Act your fucking age.
The bang bus of the skies.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Mac. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And again, if you want to watch April Fool's Day right now, we're going there right now to watch it. Become a patron. Wherever you're watching, listening to this show, there's a link in the description. And even if you missed the show, you're watching it later, I replay the movie for you guys on Patreon so you can see the whole thing. And on that note, we are
out.
Peace.